They've got the seeding out for the first round. We finally know how Gibbs and RL Esports staff is going to actually like rank these nerds. I don't know if you guys saw it. I don't know if you guys have talked about it. Haven't seen it. 16 teams going to the fall major. These are the matches for the first round. Got Energy versus Era, Endpoint versus Renegades, Dignitas versus Tokyo Verde, G2 versus Sandrock Gaming, FaZe versus Vitality, BDS versus Complexity, Ground Zero versus Envy, Semper versus Furia. And a lot of people look at these and go, how dare you? How dare you put Envy at 10th seed? What are you? Why? How? That's not okay. That's not fair. Blah, 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 blah. And luckily for us, we're going to provide some insight on the topic. If you guys are watching on YouTube, what's up? We're hanging out on twitch.tv/Lawler, where we stream every day, but Tuesday and Sunday, unless life happens and things change up. But we're going to be hanging out with everybody in chat, talking about our opinion about stuff, as well as providing some insight on the whole thing. But before we do that, obviously, if you're a YouTube frog and you haven't subbed yet, what are you doing? Somewhere over there, I think. No, over here. Over here down below, there's a sub button. If you haven't hit it, hit subscribe, turn on notifications. It's appreciated. But as I mentioned, we've got a bunch of teams, 16 in total, that are going to be talking here about why they came to be the way they are. Luckily for us, Gibbs did put out a video and talked in detail about why seeding happened the way that it did. And I'm going to try to provide a little bit of insight on that as someone who has gotten to actually be part of these conversations in the past, and as well as talk about why they did what they did, which I think is really, really important. But the cool thing about all of this is getting to understand why things happen the way they do. There's a couple things that we need to, mentality-wise, kind of shift the narrative. Number one, bias aside, that stuff does not matter. Bias aside, you need to throw out your, like, that's gone. The only thing that matters when it comes to seeding is hard facts. What in the past has happened? We can't control COVID. We can't control that it's been 2 years since we've had a land. We can't control. We have to go off the history of what has happened. That's the most important thing. You have to go off a fact. The second thing is there is a lot of uncertainty in this. There's a lot of things that we don't know. A lot of people also kind of iffy that the SSA region is not allowed to be in the majors. They can get into the wild card when the World Championship rolls around in week 1, but they can't get into the majors. People wondering about that as well. That's mostly about that uncertainty. We look at some of the other regions. There has been some exposure, like Tokyo Verde from APAC has been to a LAN before in Montreal. We've seen, obviously, Sam and OCE and everything else. So it is difficult. But the biggest and most glaring stat I can provide you is something that Direct, if you guys don't know, one of the new statisticians for the RLCS, shout out to Direct, member of the community, has been around for a long time. But for those that don't know, in SSA, one of their top teams set the all-time like goal differential ever. There's some huge polarity between the top teams and not, just so you guys know. Because of that, that usually means a lack of depth if it's super one-sided. So if that one team comes in and is like, yo, we clap and we're super good, then you adjust accordingly. These seeds every year get adjusted. Is EU going to play Sam first, or are they going to play OCE first? All those things get adjusted on a year-to-year basis. And now that we're going to have multiple worlds a year with 3 majors, with international competition and a world championship, we should have enough of a sample size to be able to make these decisions better. Which, honestly, for those that haven't seen the video for Gibbs, if you guys haven't seen the details as to why, a couple things we'll do. First thing we're going to talk about is what the seeds actually are in order from 1 to 16, based upon what region they're representing. The second thing, then, we're going to break down how I feel about why they are done. I have the reasoning explained from Gibbs's video. I took notes and TLDR. I did all the homework for you. And then we're going to talk about just overall. I can tell you initially, from what I'm seeing, I'm actually really happy with these seeds for a multitude of reasons. Number one, it gives the previous World Championship region a bye, or a bias, I guess, if you want to give it to them. The second thing is it still gives quality to the teams that proved they are the best in their region. Again, I talk about changing up that mentality, chat. I talk about getting rid of the bias that we have of like, well, yeah, NA 1, 2, 3 is definitely better than it. That's not the point. We need to give credibility to the fact that these teams were the best in their region, and we need to reward them for that. As simple as that. If you are a Era or a Furia or whatever, if Furia is the best team from Sam, we need to give them a seeding accordingly. You know, we have to put them in a position to where they can be successful. You know, hey, you look at Ground Zero. Ground Zero's 7th seed. Why? Because they placed top 7 last World Championship. We have to give them credit for that. So you see the contrast between Ground Zero and Renegades, and that is the difference and the reward of being the best in your region. Another thing to keep in mind, people look at the difference between Era and Tokyo Verde at 16 and 14. You look at Renegades as well at 15. Why is Tokyo Verde above Era and Renegades? Because since OCE and Sam have come into the RLCS, the second team, whether they are the high seed or the low seed, one time it was Chiefs that came in as the low seed as the second seed, but they made top 4 while the other one. But only one team out of the 2 that gets sent to land from OCE and Sam have wins. So the team that does not get a win has never gotten a win in LAN history ever for the RLCS for OCE and Sam. So if I'm the better team, quote unquote, who gets a victory, the other team doesn't do squat. And it's been like that the entire time. So until Sam and OCE show us, hey, you can send more than one good team, that's how it's going to go. And you may see that adjusted for SSA if SSA does well and stuff in the future. So it is a learning process. So let's talk specifically about why the teams are where they are. First things first, chat, let's look at the list in order. And I'm gonna type these up for y'all so you can see it. But these are the orders of the seeds based upon how they were gifted a placement. So they take NA1, EU1, EU2, NA2, NA3, EU3. So the first 6 seeds are all given to NA and EU, the 2 best regions, which is the exact same as the results from Season 8 World Championship. That also applies to 7 and 8. So in Season 8, at the results of the World Championship, which I can pull up, NA, EU, NA, EU, EU, NA, EU, OCE. So OCE had a top 8 performance at LAN. The rest is predominantly EU, predominantly NA. So the top 8 is the exact same. There's no way to actually compare how it should be seeded of who's who, who's better or whatnot. And that goes back to that mentality shift. We have to throw away the assumptions. We have to take the hard facts of how did teams perform the last time we saw them on LAN. That's all we can do. We can't do that comparison because we have nothing to compare it to. So I do like top 8. I'm a huge fan of putting these teams in the order that they did. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think I'm totally okay with that. And because EU with Reciprocity, even though they bombed pretty hard, they had 4: Reciprocity, Veloce, Dig, and Vitality. Well, NA, you know, had 3. So that kind of shift in the mentality of where people should be placed and stuff, I think top 8 is seated just fine. Also understand that where these are placed are going to differ. So matchups align on the overall bracket. Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that NA isn't playing NA, EU isn't playing EU. Like, we have to make sure that things swap so we get international matches, especially not in the first round. At the end of the day, this is a live event, a LAN, international competition. We want to make sure that we don't see repeats. If we talk about EU2 and 3 and NA4, so that is here. The reason why it's doing it is, like I just said, you want to balance out Europe and North America, similar to like a snake style draft. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, a snake style draft, if I'm drafting teams, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1 to make sure that that middle area, so like the 4, 5, are balanced. So you see that here. Case in point, NA back-to-back. So even though initially EU gets favoritism in the high seed with 2, 3, NA gets the favoritism with 4, 5, and then EU comes after. Not only does it balance it, but it makes the matches themselves so they don't overlap between international competition with NA, EU, EU. It's to separate. So all that makes perfect sense. I love the way they've done seeding so far. When we get into 5, 6, these two, NA3 and EU3, again, reiteration, they want to avoid NA versus NA and EU versus EU. So NA3, FaZe is here, BDS is here. They swap these. Normally it would be NA3 and then EU3, but they swap these to make sure that they are playing cross region. So they're not the same. because otherwise it'd be phase versus complexity and vitality versus BDS. So they have to swap those as well, which makes sense. So that all lines up. I agree with them there. And NA5, yeah, NA gets the 5th seed because of winning the world championship previously. The explanation that Gibbs gives in the video is that, quote, NA is 5 instead of 6 because they won the world championship, and EU gets a boost in the middle here. So EU4 gets bumped up higher than NA4. So it bounces out by this becoming here as the 5th seed. EU gets benefited here as compared to NA4. So they do try to balance it out across the entire board. Not only do they do it with matchups, they also do it with making sure that international competition still stays international. We don't want same regions playing each other, especially in the first round. And that will change based upon win and loss, based upon how things play out when we get into the second rounds and everything else. When we get to OCE being top 8, which is here at number 7, it is because they finished top 8 at the World Championship, and it's the same matchup versus NA top 4. So in World Championships of the past, I talked about this in the beginning as well, is determining, like, does NA play OCE 1 as their last seed, or do they play OCE or SAM 1 as their other seed, right? Ultimately, when you look at how things play out, OCE got top 8, so that is why they're given a benefit. And then the matchup that's actually happening, so who OCE number 1 plays against, they end up playing the worst, or one of the worst North American teams. It's the same thing with Endpoint, because Endpoint is the number 1 seed from Europe. They play the worst team from OCE. NRG is the best team from NA. They play the worst team from South America. So you still get seeding advantage, the exact same as what it was in the past, but the benefit this time is they're also trying to do it with the mid series as well. But these are the exact same as what they would normally be. If we were doing a LAN just like we did in the past, and you see it here, the first matches, Space Station, who's one of the high seeds, is playing the worst from OCE. Same thing that applies here. So they're trying to balance it out to the best of their ability. So that is how they do OCE top. The next decision that they're making is trying to figure out where they put North America 5 and Europe 5, as well as like the second OCE seed, Middle East, and the APAC, the Asia Pacific team. So trying to figure out where they put Tokyo Verde, Sandrock Gaming, and then OCE2. Kind of your last 4. Where do you put these? How do you pair them up? How do you make sure it balances out based on what teams they play? And the way that it's explained according to Gibbs and the Rocket League esports staff is North America and Europe are higher than MENA and APAC because for the most part, major regions do better, which historically, again, makes sense. These are unproven. They're going to be given a disadvantage for their first season. You still want to give them credit for coming first in their region. So that's why Tokyo Verde and Sandrock get a lead over OCE and SAM. And it goes back to that initial thing as well. Sandrock and Tokyo Verde, you can't discredit that they did the best in their region. Tokyo Verde went through 2 regions to get here, APAC South and North. And then for Sandrock Gaming, they performed the best in MENA. So you have to give them credit that they are the best representation from their area, while historically the second team in OCE and SAM have never performed well. They've never gotten the win. So it goes back to that initial point. So ultimately, with all of that stuff explained, matchup-wise, I like it. Some of these look really, really weird. The fact that Envy, who is what? So Envy is 4th seed from North America, and they're playing the number 1 seed from OCE, while the 5th seed is having to play top 3 in Europe. So think about that. You're playing a team that at best finishes top 8, or you're playing the 3rd best team from Europe. What do you want? That is a huge distinction in first round matchup. Same thing applies with Vitality. Vitality is the 5th seed. Sucks for FaZe, but that's just because it's Vitality. At the end of the day, Vitality barely made it to LAN. Barely. Then you look at their 4th seed. Their 4th seed has to play, Semper has to play Furia, which is SAM number 1. So, I mean, you look at all of these. The only thing that I'm thinking about, so going from match to match, because I know some of you guys are talking about it, Energy versus Era. You know, Era, you qualified by 1 point over Noble. That's insane. The tiebreaker scenarios, how close it is coming down to the wire in that semifinals. Era taking a victory and getting in 1 point over is insanity. So Energy obviously getting the worst seed. At the end of the day, it's a Swiss format, right? It's a Swiss format. It's something you have to do. And that's just the way it goes. You have to win your matches. You got to punch up no matter what. Like, there's nothing you can do about it. So that's part of it. The second game, Endpoint versus Renegades and Dignitas versus Tokyo Verde. I'm going to say it right now. Endpoint got a much tougher match as the second seed. Renegades is a pretty dang good team. They won 2 regionals out of their 3, and then they took quarterfinals in another. Renegades is a really good team, and second seed for OCE does not give the credit it does. But at the same time, we have never seen these two teams play internationally. If we're going based upon my thoughts and predictions and what I know based upon the replay analysis I've done on other teams, Dignitas is going to wipe the floor with Tokyo Verde. I love Realize. Realize watches my stream quite a bit. He is literally coaching Tenhao and Maru. Tokyo Verde is coming in with a learning experience and just trying to get their, international experience under their belt. Because Montreal in 2018 was the last time they did it with 1NE and Conra and Misty. So it's a totally different team, totally different branding, and a totally different experience. Realize is a GOAT. I hope he flips resets on some of these kids. Shows AppJack how to do it. But realistically, Dignitas should smack that team. I think Dignitas is going to get a free 1-0, if you want to call it that. And that's not to discredit Tokyo Verde. I just look at that matchup and I go, good luck. Good luck. I would 100 out of 100 times take Tokyo Verde over Renegades. But this is also giving the respect and giving the ability for these teams to have a chance. If I'm Renegades or Tokyo Verde, who do I want? Endpoint or Dignitas? Neither, personally. I don't want either one. Both of those matchups suck. So if you look at it from that perspective, I think there is no easy match. This is literally the best teams in the world. That's tough. It is very tough. You then look at G2 Sandrock. It's probably one of my favorite matches, honestly. G2 Sandrock is a really fun match. I do know that they switched this, actually. I think part of the reason why they did this and they swapped these two is because we see Sandrock play against EU all the time, but we have never seen Sandrock play against NA, ever. So I'm pretty sure they swapped these to give the NA versus Mina matchup instead. I'm pretty sure that's how they did it, which makes sense. We've seen Sandrock play against Vitality and stuff in plenty of stuff. I've never seen them play an NA team. So I'm excited for that. Unfortunately, O'Khaled's not going because if you guys haven't watched my videos, he's got exams on the following Monday. And there's no way for him to quarantine in time from Sweden, travel back, make exams and stuff. So Senzo's going to be playing. Senzo used to be part of their starting roster before he went and took the sub spot. TRK came in. Senzo, I think, is absolutely incredible as a player. So although O'Khaled is a staple and is a huge catalyst for that team, I do think that match will be just fun. Plus, I think it allows G2 to start getting in a groove. FaZe versus Vitality is my highlight match. FaZe versus Vitality. We've got a Vitality that has been all over the place for results. Barely squeaking by. But it's LAN Vitality. And if Vitality makes day 3, you know what happens. KDOP goes to the grand finals. The story lives on. This is going to be the first time that we get to see this Vitality roster play on LAN. We have seen Alpha play on LAN. We have seen the other 2 win world championships. But we have never seen this 3-headed monster play on LAN together. This is a LAN team. This is a team that I think people need to rate highly on LAN. You'll hear me talk about it in my predictions. As for FaZe, that's a young team. That's a young team. A lot of rookies on LAN. Going to be interesting to see how that one plays. They're going to have to rely on their leadership with AJ, who the last time he played on LAN was top 4 with Rogue, I'm pretty sure. Back when it was Kronovi, Wonder, and AJ. Yeah, think about that throwback. So, interesting to see FaZe. Curious on how that's going to go. This is a very exciting match to me. BDS versus Complexity. BDS, no LAN experience. There's also been some nerves. You guys didn't watch my video the other day about lack of communication and some of the things going on with them. Maybe the mentality gets right in the next few weeks. They come in, they have a big performance. BDS, I think, needs a lot to prove to show that it is not a fluke or whatever you want to call it. They are unproven on LAN, and I'm excited to see if they step up to the plate on that. As for Complexity, they're relatively rookies at LAN. So good luck to them. Good luck to them. The fact that they get the ability to show up, they play a big profile match, a chance to play upset, get that mentality in the right place, hit the motivation. There's a lot of things that could do for complexity. If they get into a groove, if their mentality's in a good place and they play upset against BDS, that could be huge. That could be the difference between top 8 or not. These are kind of decider matches right away, in my opinion. Because going down into the low side of that bracket is not going to get easy. Yes, the teams you're playing are easier, but like, man, I do not want to be in that 2-2 game trying to play against, like, if I'm like Vitality and I got to play like a Dignitas or something like that in the 2-2 game, bro. Heck no. So if Shad Razebull and AJG start popping, Shad, gets into his groove, hair looking styling as ever. He's got the eyebrow slit. Watch out. You never know. You never know. BDS could also shut him down. BDS could also show him like, yo, we are the better team. We're composed and we do not break. Exciting to see. Ground Zero Gaming versus Envy is also very exciting. I think people heavily underrate OCE right now. I think a lot of people discredit OCE, and by all means, they do a lot of... They're very telegraphed, is the way I would say it, but that does not mean it's not effective. OCE has gone through a lot of refinement in the past 2 years, and I'm excited to see what they bring to the table. There's been a lot of conversation. Who's the best team at OCE? Is it Ground Zero or Renegades? Renegades had 2 wins. Ground Zero did not. But Ground Zero has more consistent performances. They don't drop early in tournaments. They put up a fight. There's also been the conversation around Torsos. Torsos's ability to freeze up at LAN or get frustrated, as it shows in his body language. Will he crack under the pressure again? You're going up against, in my opinion, Envy, one of the best LAN teams to be if Atomic shows up. I think that Envy team is built for success. You've also got the 4-time on your team. Turbo don't lose LAN. And if he does, it's not often. That is a very exciting one. To me, this is Torsos versus Atomic. If Atomic settles in, good luck. Semper Furia, I think this is probably the most neutral match, I would say. I think Semper has shown resilience. They have shown some pretty exciting things. Yeah, same thing with Envy. Turbo's going back home for the first time in 2 years. I'm sure he's excited to be home territory, see his family, all that kind of stuff. But Semper versus Fury, I think, is pretty neutral. Semper, again, like I said, has shown resilience. They get wins at times where I'm like, this is a sloppy win, but the same thing can be said against Dignitas. But you're going up against my boy Jan. And like, that Fury team is stacked with talent. They're aggressive. They catch people off guard. If Semper doesn't fall succumb to what a lot of teams do the first time they play Sam, which is like lack of respect, they rely on them too much. They go, hey, we're accustomed to playing a certain way, and all of a sudden Fury comes out, we're just super fast, super aggressive, etc. If Semper recognizes that they're just individually better than them, they ego challenge them like Energy had to, they should be able to win that. But I do think it is pretty neutral, which is great for the 8-9 seed. It's right in the middle. I think it works out really, really well. And that's the way that it should go. So all in all, chat, I think this seeding is done quite well. I think Gibbs and the Synex Esports staff as a collective did a really good job. They've been thinking about this even before teams started playing. This has been off-season conversations and stuff. This has been a long time in the works. So I am really, really excited about how this plays out. Because as soon as that first round happens and we go into round 2, all hell breaks loose. When we start seeing same regions playing each other and everything else, and some familiarity, man. And we get into those mid rounds where, a certain team based on game differential, and if they 3-0 or not is the difference between playing someone like Tokyo Verde or playing a Renegades or a Complexity or something. That is make or break for top 8. It is a different beast. So the difficulty though is they've got to cover 33 matches over the course of 3 days. And then on Saturday and Sunday, they are covering the quarterfinals and the semifinals and the grand finals, which is a lot of best of 7s and a best of set in there and all that stuff as well. So how they're going to break down 33 matches or 11 matches a day, I don't know. I don't know how they're going to cover that broadcast, but I am excited to see it play out. I'm excited to see international competition. I'm excited to see this all go and come to fruition because we've been waiting 2 years for it, chat. It's been 2 years since we've gotten to see this stuff. So if you guys want to know about what I think the matches are going to be, what my predictions are, you should hit subscribe and turn on notifications if you're on YouTube. And make sure that you guys stay up to date on all the latest Rocket League news, as well as how I feel about these matches, because in the future, I will be talking over the next couple weeks a lot on the Fall Major, my concerns, questions I need to answer, things like the predictions of how I think this is going to completely play out from start to finish, which we'll do at chat, and a lot of other things. So with that said, chat, appreciate y'all being here. YouTube, appreciate you guys taking the time to watch, but that is going to do it for this video. Chat, as always, you get the final word. What do you guys have to say to the YouTube frogs, other than that they should be here on Twitch hanging out with us? Poop indeed. I'll leave you with that, chat. Poop. Also drink water. We'll see you next time. Peace.